Welcome back, everybody. I'm Winter, and today I'm bringing you the Lurker unit guide. What they do, best uses for them, and, of course, how to kill them. Alright, so the Lurker is probably the strongest basic siege unit for Zerg. Anti-ground siege unit. The way you get a Lurker is you upgrade to Lair, you get a Hydralisk Den, and then you can upgrade that Hydralisk Den, you can morph it into a Lurker Den, which does take a pretty long while. It's almost double the time it takes to build the Hydralisk Den originally, so it's a big commitment. But at that point, once you finish it, you can morph your Hydralisk for an additional cost in supply into Lurkers. It's expensive. They're expensive units. But once they burrow, now they can only attack while burrowed. This is also very important. While they're burrowed, they cannot move. They cannot move. But they also cannot be seen without detection. You need a scan, you need an observer, a revelation, an overseer, I guess a fungal, technically. And from there they do damage in a line that hits everything on the ground that it hits. Now, a few little things about this is you can actually dodge the shot. You see it takes some time for that spine to go out. This one Marine can just run this around. Now, this can be abused a little bit. Obviously, this doesn't come into play very often if you're in the right place at the right time. But this is partially why it's very important to spread your units out against lurkers. The closer you get, the quicker the spine hits, and he gets his head blown off. Or sliced off, I guess is more accurate. But lurkers are great anti-ground units. They're great against unit compositions like mass bio, for example. Even if they have a scan or something like that, lurkers will just slice it up. Ideally, in this scenario, you want some Zerglings in front. You want maybe a few Hydralisks because you probably have them left over from making the lurkers, or some Banelings. But yeah, you see 31 supply for Zerg, and we got 52 for Terran here. Let's see. How do I get myself a scan?
You scared me.
Orbital fire. You know what? We're gonna go ahead and get ourselves a Raven here. But usually you're using scans. All right. There's no way to simulate a scan apparently, very easily in this scenario. But yeah, the lurkers are burned, and you as a Terran player say, "Oh yeah, all right. Well, that's only a few lurkers. Maybe I can attack into that." Not a perfect demonstration, but as long as you have enough buffer, the longer the lurkers are allowed to be able to do damage, the better they are. They can slice through huge armies. With good micro, those armies can maybe take it out, but we're not talking about Pult level micro here, or TY, or Neeb or anything like that. We're not talking about that. We're talking about people making armies and A-moving, and lurkers are a great way to stop that. Another army it can beat pretty well is just heavy stalker, maybe a bunch of zealots in there, or just roach hydra without any sort of support, or Lingbane can get sliced up as well. All these are very... Any units that you build a lot of but are not powerful individually, they get sliced by the lurkers. They get sliced, is what happens. So, these are all units that are directly countered by the lurkers. Other units like, obviously, drones and workers are taken out very easily by lurker drops and stuff like that as well. But, lurkers, you know, you're probably on this guide not because you don't know how to use lurkers, but instead because you want to know how to kill lurkers. So, let's talk about that. Alright, so we're going to go through race by race and talk about the best unit compositions to kill lurkers. Now, we'll start with Protoss. We'll say 10 lurkers here. And then you got your standard buffer army, Hydras, Zerglings, anything that allows the lurkers to stay alive to do more damage. For Protoss, a ground army you'll see a lot of the time. To counter the lurkers. You're looking at as many immortals as possible, pretty much. You know they're going for lurkers. You want as many immortals as possible. If they're adding in more Zerglings or anything like that later on, Archons. And then the buffer is your Zealots and everything else in there. Ideally, you have Templar for Storm and stuff like that. But the idea here, we'll give them Storm. And, of course, you're going to want an Observer. And now here's another big point. Here's another big point. Is the Oracle. Now, in most build orders, you do want to be opening up with a Stargate to get Phoenixes and the access to Oracles. Now, obviously, Void Rays do counter Lurkers. Not as great against the Hydralisk, so use at your own risk. But this is the makeup of the ground army usually you're looking at against like a macro Lurker player. Obviously, I have way more supply right now. So it's a little bit of an unfair fight. But the Immortals are the backbone of this army because they are the ones that survive long enough to take down the Lurkers. Now, obviously, you want to get detection on there. Now I can see everything. The Lurkers will burrow. Usually a pretty intimidating force of Lurkers. But now that I can see them all, pretty much this is an A-move situation at this point. If you can get the storms on the Lurkers, you just kind of crush through. Not really a fair fight in this sense, but just demonstrating how you can pound the point home. A bunch of bio like that, or a bunch of stalkers, actually would not be able to fight in there because they just die so quickly to the Lurkers. So Immortals, Archons, Templar, and then Charge Lots as kind of your filler is what you're looking for as a Protoss player. Now, as Terran. As Terran. Now, a lot of players will go for that standard bio army, but against Lurkers, this isn't always reliable. What you're looking for is Liberators and tanks are the best counters. You can also kind of use Thors, but the reason for this is, one, Lurkers can't shoot up, and Hydralisks suck against Liberators. They just do. Alright? And it's incredibly difficult for the Lurkers to get into position. If there are a few Liberators in place, with a few tanks backing them up, now in this scenario, I do need to give them a Raven for detection. But yeah, just have a few tanks backing them up with the Liberators in place, and then it's going to be very difficult, assuming you have a bunch of Marines and Marauders in the front and all of that. But you need to switch up your units. If you're just making Marines and Marauders, it's not going to work. Oh yeah, I'm going to try to siege up over here and lose my Raven, of course. But if I had detection, these demonstrations are just not going well. But this is the army you're looking at to counter this. One scan, all of these die almost instantaneously. This is the reason a lot of the time in higher level games you don't see Lurkers used against Terran, even if they are making bio armies. The reason is because Lurkers keep you from getting the Hive Tech and encourage them to make more tanks and Liberators, both of which are good against your later game. So if they're able to counter the Lurkers, they're probably going to be able to counter Ultralisks and maybe even Broodlords because they've already prepared those armies. The same counters to Lurkers are the same counters to Ultralisks. We got Liberators, we got tanks, we got Thors. So that is why if you're going to go Lurkers against Terran, usually you have to try to end the game on Lurker Tech before they can build up these counter units. If they're just going to continue going Marine Marauder, make Lurkers, make Ultralisks, whatever. Some Terran players will just refuse to transition into this. But Terran players, you got to switch it up. Maybe throw down another starport, another factory, maybe 3 more starports. Who knows how much money you're banking up, right? But that is the army you're looking at to beat a Lurker-based composition. Alright. And now for Zerg, which is interesting. It's a mirror matchup. It's a little bit different. There are a few things you can do with Zerg. If you've opened up and you have like roaches against Lurkers, you don't need to go to Lurkers to beat the Lurkers. Roach Ravager actually works pretty well. Now the reason for this is that you can use Corrosive Bile and a little bit of Micro to take out the Lurkers. without them actually really being able to rip in your army. Obviously, you don't want to attack. You never, ever want to attack into lurkers unless you have overwhelming forces. Overwhelming forces. But in this scenario, let's say there's a few lurkers here. And I've got a decent chunk of Roach Ravager. I don't actually have Roach Speed here, but what I can do, just throw out the shots. Don't want to go into range of very many other lurkers, but you can start picking off lurkers. This does require you to continually be moving around microing, but you can pick off lurkers. It's not that reliable, but what you're doing in this scenario, if you're not going to kill them with lurkers, what you're trying to do is transition up in tech into Broodlords. And Broodlords are the ultimate counter to a ground army of Zerg. Ultralists are actually pretty well countered by lurkers. Lurkers can maintain a defensive posture in great position, and Ultralists actually have a tough time in the later game getting through. But if you get to Broodlords, then you can completely shut down ground armies. Hydralists are not going to close the distance. They're going to have to go air. Now, of course, if you've opened up with Mutalisks, you can just continue going Mutalisks, and then just use the Mutalist to buffer. Just use the Mutalist to buffer, and then you're looking to make Lings and Banelings on the ground. You're looking to make Lings and Banelings with those Mutalists in order to be able to deal with the lurkers. Another great way of dealing with lurkers in the later game is if you're able to get to that hive tech, a couple Vipers, Blinding Cloud. The units don't move on their own. Like, a Hydralisk will move out of a Blinding Cloud. It might be a little bit awkward, but eventually they'll get out of the Blinding Cloud and still continue to fire. You Blinding Cloud a Lurker, it's not going anywhere. It's still stuck in the ground. And it's not... It's going to take him actively moving his Lurker away from the Blinding Cloud. So that's also a great counter. Of course, at this point, you probably should be going for some sort of hive tech. Ideally Broodlords, but Ultralists in combination with Blinding Clouds can work. The summary of this is that Lurkers are an amazing unit. They're great for harass. They're great for attack. They're difficult to counter, but a lot of the reason you don't see Lurkers used that often outside of Zerg versus Protoss, and even sometimes more recently, not as much in Zerg versus Protoss, is because they kind of stagnate your tech. If you can delay the Lurkers getting into a critical position for long enough to get what you need to counter them, then the Zerg player probably does not have much of a follow-up. So what's important is the Hydralisk Den. It takes a while to morph into the Lurker Den. You should be continually scouting to try to get an idea of if they're going for Lurkers or anything like that. If the Lurkers show up on your front door and you had no idea they were coming, that's not because Lurkers are good, that's because you failed at scouting. So that's the important part. It's a unit that is incredibly strong, especially the less time you have to deal with it, but it is not nearly impossible to beat. So, hopefully, this helps out a little bit. Now, I'm going to talk about just a little trick here you can use on your Lurkers as well. When you bro your Lurkers, you can put them on hold fire. So this means if an army doesn't have detection, I'm going to put these Lurkers on hold fire. And this army does not have detection without the Overseers. Now, usually, when the Lurkers just fire right off the bat, what do you do? Hold your fire, boys! Alright, when they fire right off the bat, the hotkey is F, by the way, you see it down here. You see those Lurker spines come out, it's like, ah! Alright, back off. Everybody stop where you are. Those Lurkers are scary. But now, he doesn't know about them. Oh god. That was rated R for wrecked. But, good luck. That's kind of a fancy tactic that can work in higher level games. I wouldn't rely on it to win you games, but a little bit of a fun trick there at the end. But thank you guys for watching. Good luck, have fun, and happy StarCrafting. Leave comments about what videos you'd like to see next, whether it's unit guides or quick tips or anything related. But thank you guys for watching. Good luck, have fun, and happy StarCrafting.